Some doors should just never be opened. From the outside, it was just another apartment in a totally ordinary building. But inside, it was a private museum of horror. Today, we're unlocking the door to apartment 213. It's a really chilling thought, isn't it? That the most monstrous things don't always happen in some dark, spooky alley. Sometimes they happen right next door, hidden behind the most normal-looking facade you can imagine, just waiting. So let's set the scene. We're going back to 1990 in Milwaukee, Wisconsin. A guy named Jeffrey Dahmer gets a new place, moves into a modest building called the Oxford Apartments. And for his new neighbors, it was nothing. Just another guy moving in. Totally unremarkable. And this was the specific spot, apartment 213, a number that would pretty soon become infamous, a number that's now synonymous with one of the most gruesome crime scenes in American history. For a little while, life just went on as usual, but it didn't take long for that normal guy facade to start crumbling. Unsettling signs started to pop up, things that hinted at the true horror happening inside that apartment. And these weren't subtle hints either. The warning signs were pretty direct and seriously disturbing. Neighbors started complaining about two major things: a constant, overpowering stench like rotting wheat, and the sound of a power saw running late at night. So when he was confronted about that awful smell, Dahmer had a simple, almost boring, and chillingly, a very effective excuse. He'd just shrug and say, "Oh, my refrigerator's broken. Some meat spoiled." An everyday problem for an everyday guy. And the craziest part? When authorities were called to check it out, they took him at his word. Every single time. Nobody pushed it. Nobody asked to take a peek inside the apartment. A simple, ordinary explanation was all it took to cover up an absolutely extraordinary horror. So what was actually happening behind that closed door? Well, apartment 213 wasn't just a home. It was a killer's personal laboratory. It was a house of death. Dahmer preyed on the vulnerable. He'd hang out at bars and malls, and he specifically targeted young, gay men, often from marginalized communities, Black, Asian, and Latino men. People he believed society would be less likely to notice were missing. And his lure was always the same. He'd offer them money for photo shoots. His process was just so cold and systematic. It followed 5 steps, like a recipe. First, the lure. Second, he'd drug his victims' drink. Third, he'd kill them by strangulation. Fourth, he meticulously photographed every single stage of what he did. And finally, the most gruesome step of all, preservation. And when we talk about preservation here, the reality is it's almost impossible to comprehend. This is what was causing that smell the neighbors complained about. He was keeping human remains, skulls, organs, pieces of flesh, in the very same refrigerator he claimed was just broken. The discovery of all this led to Dahmer's arrest and eventually to his full confession. But the acts themselves, as horrific as they were, they left this one profound, lingering question hanging in the air. Just why? Why photograph and dismember and preserve his victims like this? What could possibly be the motive for such a systematic and just depraved series of crimes? And the answer, from Dahmer himself, is perhaps the most haunting part of this entire story. It wasn't about rage or revenge. In his own words, it was all about possession and a desperate, twisted loneliness. He said, "I wanted to keep a part of them with me, forever." A desire so warped it created a house of horrors, hiding right there in plain sight.